Cody, whereabouts in the country are you?
I'm in Vancouver, BC.
Nice, you're a local.
If you know the area a bit better, I'm based out of Surrey specifically.
I live in the White Rock area, so similar.
Oh, nice. I thought this was all Atlantic, or it's a mix of.
It's a split, yeah. So my class is Atlantic. Alice, yours is West, I guess, eh?
BC.
All Western, BC, yeah.
Vancouver.
Right on.
Everybody can see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I guess I'll start right off the bat with one method that I've found to be somewhat effective is if you just go onto Google and you type in something like plumbers, Camrose, Alberta. Camrose is just like a small area in Alberta. I often like to focus on areas that are anywhere from like 50 to a couple 100,000 population. It's not like you can't get sales out of the higher population areas, but they're often just a lot more competitive. It's going to be really competitive for them to get to the top of the results, and there's usually all kinds of marketing companies calling them. So an area like Kamloops compared to Calgary, the nice thing about Calgary, the benefits of that would be that they often know it's competitive, so they need to spend more money. But a lot of especially if you're prospecting newer businesses, for a newer business to be ready to spend $500 a month right off the get-go, it's definitely a bit more rare. It does happen, but it's just something to be cognizant of. So when you're looking through here, I would suggest just going to like the third page of Google. You can just look through it. Some things to look for is if you find little directories like this, you can just pop those open, see what's going on in there. And then if you find like an actual link to a website that appears here, let's see if I can find one. Or even just random things. Like I've never seen QDex before, but that could be a potential fresh lead. And then you basically just want to go through these listings, find the phone numbers, pop them in the prospect tool. When you do put them in the prospect tool, one thing you always want to make sure to do is get rid of any dashes or brackets. If you don't delete them, it won't give you all the results most of the time. If you do get rid of them, then it'll show you 100% of the time if there is that phone number appearing anywhere on any kinds of listings. So this one, you can see that it was called 50 days ago, close no sale, probably not the strongest lead. So I would personally move right past that, but you could always click into it. Sometimes the last rep will leave a note on it saying, just wasn't ready right now. And then that would be a potential for maybe 2 months down the road. Could be a totally different story for the business. Maybe they weren't ready because they couldn't afford it at the time. So you could always give them a call back potentially and see if maybe it was a better time to have a discussion. But in most cases, 50 days ago, close no sale wouldn't be the strongest. And then before you call it though, because it already is in the system, you just want to take that number and then put it in the prospect tool. And then you can just hit save, and then you just wait for the check mark to come up. And then that way, once the check mark comes up, then you know you're good to go to call that lead. And then it's all about just being as quick and efficient as possible. Because when you first start out, like I mentioned, you'll have to go through all kinds of leads where you'll keep on getting these results. But like I said, that girl that found that group yesterday, she had 15 leads, and I think 8 of them were fresh to the system. And that was the first time she ever started prospecting. So if you guys, you just got to think outside of the box a little bit. And if you can find a source that's been untapped, then you're much more likely to not only get a bunch of fresh leads, but then obviously generate sales from those leads. And when you're first starting, like I was probably spending 10 hours a week outside of work hours to prospect when I first started, but now I've gotten to the point where I've gotten enough leads, like a pipeline of leads, and gotten efficient enough at it where I can probably spend about 2 to 3 hours per week outside of work prospecting, and that's enough prospects to last me the entire week without ever having to go on the dialer.
That's huge. That's really interesting, Cody. Is there I'm sure, and this is probably just like a noob question because I'm getting back into the training world, but I'm assuming there's like a dashboard or like a way that you can go and access your full list of prospects that you've put into the system before?
Yeah, exactly. So I guess that would bring me to the next steps. So this is how I have my list organized. Yours will be a lot longer, but if you just go into, I have like OCD when it comes to organizations. So if you go into customized tabs, you can set it up to exactly how you like it. I, of course, have my prospects right at the top. So you basically just click into there. I think there's usually 2 my pending prospects. If you don't see your leads in there, just click in the other one and then you'll see your leads in there. This would just be my current list of prospects. So when I put them into the system here, first thing I do, always make sure to put the link to that prospect into the lead origin spot here. And then that way, when you go to call them, you can just quickly pop open the source with the information. It gives you a lot of information to speak to that customer about. Facebook page obviously would have photos and website links, email addresses, a lot of useful information to, because when you call them, if you say like, oh, I noticed you were in this area, you read off their services, you're offering this, this, and this. A lot of people are often like pretty impressed that you are so knowledgeable about their business. Whereas if you don't open that link, you just call them, oh, do you do this and this? And then often you'll get a response saying, well, can't you see what I do online? Like, why would I trust you to spend money with if you don't even know the most basic things about my business? So something to always keep mindful of. I personally like moving. I will copy it from here and then paste it into here because when you convert the account, it will show the link at the top in the account section there. So you don't have to go hunting for the lead origin at the bottom after it is converted. And then also it's all about efficiency. So this way, if it's over here, it turns it into a hyperlink. So you don't have to double click and copy and paste it every time. And then when you do initially enter the prospect here, I would fill this field, this field, this field. I just put a dot and dot here to clean it up a bit, because if you don't put anything in here, then it just enters it as self-prospect company. When you're sorting through your list, it kind of looks messy. And then you want to leave the language preference as none, just because if you put in English, it will automatically convert the lead. And then if you don't have the actual business owner's name in there, after it automatically converts, then it will go to our listings department. And then when it goes to be activated, they'll reject it, make it inactive. And then it just makes it a hassle, especially if you don't have the proper business name while it's a lead. You can easily just edit the business name and then convert it. But then once it's already converted into an account, you'll have to do a case to listings to be able to change the business name. Just takes time and becomes a hassle, especially if you're doing it. You have to do it a bunch of times.
You just saved us all like 10 hours of our life, I think, over the next 6 months.
These are hours of lessons I've learned that I'm passing on to you guys.
The hard way. We appreciate the wisdom.
No
We've been testing out these new call scripts that we've got from Sarah to use kind of on the open market list. Similar to, I think, the scripts that you guys are using on the dialer too. So kind of like very soft intro, confirming name, address, phone number. Do I have that right? And then trying to go into the fact finding from there. Cody, is there any other approaches or intros that you use specifically for self prospects? I'll say that's half of question 1. And I guess question 1B would be, how much are you prepping for these calls? Like, how much time do you spend prepping for these calls?
Okay, so my pitch is actually quite simple for self prospects. Basically, my first question is, we just want to confirm the area that we had you in. So if this was my lead, I would have this page in front of me here. And then I guess to answer your other question quickly, I try to do minimum prep because obviously we have talk time targets to hit. And I've gotten to the point where I can just like be talking to somebody on the phone. I've said my pitch literally 10,000 times, so I can say it without while thinking something completely different. So I'll be reading through their listing like while I'm doing my pitch. Obviously, it will take you guys a little bit of time to get comfortable with that. So when you first start, I would say just quickly maybe spend 20 seconds reading through. You don't want to just be doing this huge deep dive because they won't answer. The next time you call them back, then you'll have to do the prep all over again, and it just becomes incredibly time consuming over the course of the day. That could eat up like a half hour of your talk time in the end, which is definitely not good. So I would just say, just confirm that we had them in the right area, the Camros directory, while I'm talking to them, I would probably have market potential. I always have market potential open at all times. You can have if you're calling like a lot of Alberta leads, you can just have Alberta open for you. And then I've also gotten to the point where like I Google search towns and areas every single time I'm speaking with somebody and they mention a town. So it's like I probably know like at least 50% of every town and area in the whole country at this point, but that literally takes months to learn, but eventually you'll get there. And it helps a lot if somebody says you're talking to somebody, you see they're from Camrose, then you can just literally zoom right in, find Camrose right away. You have the map in front of you. Another way to sound like you know what you're talking about. Okay, I see you're in Camrose there. You also servicing Wetaskiwin, Beaumont, Daysland, those kind of areas. And then that way, oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. Okay, great. So we can definitely get you in that directory. And then for category, I noticed you're doing heating and plumbing. Did you have like a focus on either of those at all? Were you trying to like push more towards the plumbing side of things or the heating side of things? My personal strategy is I try to focus on one category to start, just to keep things simple for both myself and for the customer. And then a lot of the times the customer will want the world. One of the most common is you'll talk to somebody in Toronto and they'll be like, oh, I cover the entire GTA. It's like, okay, well, what city are you based out of? Well, I cover the GTA. And then I have to ask them literally 3 times, no, like, what city are you based out of? And then we can just start you there. And like, oh, okay, well, I'm based out of Scarborough. Like, okay, great. So we can start you in Scarborough. We could put you under the plumbing category. And then my next segue is, and are you familiar with how yellowpages.ca, like how it works at all? And then if they say yes, okay, great. What a lot of people don't realize is blah, blah. If they say no, okay, no worries. What a lot of people don't realize is right now, if you go onto Google and then while I'm talking to them, I would be typing in plumbing contractors, Scarborough. When you go into Google, you type in plumbing contractors, Scarborough. Another good thing is to memorize our category names because we're going to be much more likely to appear as a top result, as you can see here for plumbing contractors Scarborough, which is going to sound a lot more impressive to customers because sometimes they'll be on their computer or on their phone while they're talking to you and they'll do a search. So you want to make sure you have that in front of you. And if you say we're number one, then they look, then we are in fact number one. And then otherwise, sometimes we appear a little bit further. If we are number one, you want to make that very clear. Right now, if somebody goes onto Google, they type in plumbing contractors Scarborough, we are actually the number one result that appears on Google. As I'm sure you can imagine, because of that, we're getting quite significant amounts of traffic to our platform. Right now, when people click into that, they're seeing guys like the Urban Plumber, New Water Plumbing, Drain King Plumbers, Conmar Plumbing. Any of those guys familiar at all to you? The hope is that they recognize at least a couple of them, because then that's going to obviously make them a lot more confident if one of their big competitors that they offer similar services to is also appearing at the top, then obviously that's going to make them much more likely to be interested in purchasing something to be up there along with them. If they say they don't recognize them, I just brush it off like, oh, well, there's about 500 guys here. You're not going to know all of them, right? And kind of laugh about it. Like, oh, yeah, of course. And yeah, so basically right now we have about 8 businesses, usually the guy with the logos here appearing permanently positioned at the top of the results. So these guys got full page profiles, before and after photos, links to their online properties like Facebook pages, websites, things like that. And obviously being at the top of the results on that top link on Google there, these are the guys getting a lot of the traffic. So we're just going to see if you wanted to have your business appear as a top result there as well, so that you could be getting that traffic when people are looking online for a plumber in your area there. And that's basically like what I say every single call, or the gist of it at least.
That's fascinating, Cody. But I gotta say, I'm like having like these PTSD nightmares of me telling someone that we appeared #1 on Google and then doing the search to find out that no, we're not.
Yeah. So that's something that a lot of people, new guys, struggle with, is just typing in plumbing contractor Scarborough while they're talking to the customer, or trying to find like a pause. They get like nervous. I saw a new rep was sharing a screen with me. He like misspelled Ottawa like 4 times. I was like, oh no, like just a disaster. But yeah, so always make sure that we do in fact appear well. If you are on the dialer, it also makes it a lot more difficult, because a lot of the dialer calls will be completely random kinds of businesses, whereas we don't appear nearly as well for certain kind of businesses, especially if they're really like offshoot categories. But usually for like any contractors, if you search the category exactly how it's like spelt in our heading, we often almost always appear somewhere on the first page, especially in the smaller areas. Maybe not like Calgary or Toronto, but any areas usually like less than a few 100,000 population will at least appear somewhere on the first page.
That's awesome. Richard, I saw your hand up go up a little while ago. Did you still have a question for Cody or something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I guess I heard him say he doesn't have to use a dialer because he has enough prospects. Is that something you can do? Like, I don't have to go on a dialer if I populate my prospect list?
When you
I'll answer that and just say Cody has earned that privilege.
That's not what I asked, though. That's not what I asked. Okay, yeah.
Well,
It's a possibility.
yes and no. It's a possibility, right?
Yep.
But you've got to earn it. You've got to earn it, right? So there's no world in which a Mac who's been here for 2 weeks, people are going to say, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about the dialer. Now, if you come in your first week and you prove us all wrong, set that precedent, right? Go for it. But it is a privilege you've got to earn, and you've got to show us that you can handle it.
my
It's
personal suggestion as well would be, like, when you're first starting out, you're going to be like I was saying, just doing simple things like typing in the search while you're talking to people. And these are all things you want to practice on the dialer, because if you spend a bunch of time right off the bat, you get a bunch of great leads, and then you call them when you're still not comfortable with what you're doing, you're going to burn through a lot of those prospects. And to waste a prospect is a lot more painful than wasting a dialer lead.
Thank you.
Beautiful point. Yeah. What else, guys? Any questions for Cody while we have him? What a great resource.
I had a question about the competitors. You kind of went over it, but like, how would you bring that up? Because I've had a couple of times with where I've tried to bring up competitors, and then they're like, kind of brushing it off. How would you bring the seriousness or bring emphasis to competitors?
Well, do you ask if they recognize any of those guys first off, or?
I did write that down, actually. I usually ask who their competitors are, so I wrote that down to ask if they're familiar. I heard that in your pitch.
Yeah, just because then that basically relates something in their minds, and that causes the trigger where then that will pique their interest right there. If you start listing off people that they recognize that are appearing on our platform already, then in their mind, they're just starting to think, well, if my competitors are up there, why am I not up there? Why would my competitor be up there for no reason? And then that's where also part of my pitch. Most of the businesses that are at the top of our results have been renewing with us year after year. So I'll tell them that as well. Like the Urban Plumber, New Water, Drain King, you said you recognized all those guys. They're offering a fairly similar service as to what you offer. That's where you can also like maybe ask them some more questions. And that's where it's beneficial, like learn a little bit about the different categories and where also prospecting can work well, because eventually when you prospect, you can focus on specific kinds of categories. I personally prefer calling contractors, so I've learned a decent amount about what they have to offer. Nothing like super in depth or anything. You don't have to feel like you know everything when it comes to being a plumber. Like you could almost get your red seal when it comes to that, but You can just ask them like, oh, are you specializing on service calls? Do you do mostly residential, commercial? And then that will give you a little bit more information about their business in general. And then you can more fine tune the program. And then, okay, well, you're doing, and especially if they say they're doing like service calls, a lot of residential, then I'll always mention, okay, great. Well, most of the people searching on our platform would be the residential side of things anyway. So definitely sounds like it'd be a great fit for you up there with the Urban Plumber, New Water Plumbing. These guys have been renewing with us year after year in most cases. So we just wanted to see if you wanted to have your business as a top result there as well. And then at that point, they'll usually say, well, how does that work? And then that's where you can like jump into price points and things like that.
Right.
Sounds good. One thing I also want to know, was I know you mentioned that you do Facebook prospecting. I know that that's kind of a difficult thing to go through because obviously you don't want to go through your Facebook, but how would that work? How would prospecting someone via Facebook work?
It's really, if you go on to Facebook, there's an option where you can like search by pages, and then you can just type in category area. I have a different method of doing it. That way it's sometimes difficult to find fresh leads unless you're searching like a random category. There was a time where I spent 2 weeks calling taxidermists because they were like untouched, and I spent another 2 weeks calling protective coatings, just things that no other reps had really targeted. And at the same time, if you do call those random categories, they're good for the fact that a lot of marketing companies haven't usually reached out to them, so they're a bit fresher. The only thing is I usually would end up, in my experience, would probably end up selling them like 40 to like $80 a month for those smaller ones, just because they're not really used to having to spend a whole lot on advertising because it's normally not very competitive.
Fair enough.
But of course, if they're like right off the bat, oh, I need all kinds of work, and you're asking them those questions, like, are you able to handle more traffic to your business? Like, oh yeah, I could use all kinds. I've actually been waiting for a call like this, and those are all signals where you need to be like, okay, well, let's look at getting you in multiple markets, categories right off the bat, and then you could start your pitch 200-300 or whatever you feel comfortable.
May I ask what your method is? Like, I know that you said that that's the way that most people do it. What is your method
for prospecting on Facebook?
Yeah.
I don't even think I would sell my method for $10,000.
That's gold, baby.
Well, you can't blame me for asking the right question.
Jackson, it bodes very well for your sales career that you're willing to ask that uncomfortable question, even after you got kind of polite pushback on it. So respect, man, respect.
My suggestion, though, that I don't personally use, but I've seen a lot of other people have success with, like I said, is just finding random Facebook groups that some of them are private too, if you can sneak your way in there, or if it's just like a local group where obviously you can easily get access because you are local. I would suggest doing that because then you're not going to have that many marketing people scavenging through those groups looking for leads. And like I saw for that person yesterday, 50% of them were fresh. So
that makes sense. I'm on a lot of Facebook groups, so going out and finding them would make sense. So
yeah, definitely leverage them if you can. And just because I do it one way, like there could literally be 100 other ways to prospect that could be more efficient than the way I do it and be stronger leads for all I know. I just been super comfortable with Facebook. I've been doing it for so long, but it could also be detrimental even. Like I could be maybe even doing better, but I'm just comfortable knowing I can do well and just continue doing what I do kind of thing.
I know LinkedIn is another source people use. LinkedIn is a good one. Cody, I want to kind of underline the point that you've made a couple times of, make 100 calls to plumbers because you're going to understand how to speak to them. You're going to understand kind of their language, how they are, typical problems that they have, that, competition that they face. So, I just wanted to kind of underline that and say, guys, like if there is certain categories that you're really comfortable in, or you find you're having an easier time talking to these types of people, hone in on that niche and call them 100 times. You do that a couple times with a couple different types of businesses, and you've carved yourself out a real nice slice of the pie there.
And to add to that as well, don't call like a protective coatings, for example. Don't call 2 and they're like, oh, they were such assholes.
Right.
I'm never going to call them again. Call 10 of them, and I'm sure you'll end up coming across randomly a couple that were just super interested in advertising. And yeah, sure, I'll even if it's like $55 net sync, that's money in your pocket and a sale you wouldn't have had otherwise if you had just given up on them off the second attempt.
Good point.
I guess another common way of prospecting as well is through Kijiji. And basically the method for that is you want to search by the province, I find is the best way to do it, services. And then the guys that I know, and I have prospected on Kijiji before when I was having a little bit more trouble finding enough leads, but you eventually get really good with Kijiji. You get to the point where you start to memorize all the ads that are being posted day after day, and then you can just go, okay, those will look familiar. Oh, this one looks new. Click on that one, grab the number, put in the prospect tool, and it makes it a lot more efficient when you're looking through. And then the guys that use it a lot, they'll have like 8 tabs of Kijiji open all day long to different provinces, and they'll just be refreshing like every 5 minutes and just looking for new leads. Because if you search by the province, especially in Ontario, like you'll see a new ad come up usually like every 3 minutes.
Nice. Pro tip. I hope you guys are writing this down. This is gold. First session's free, right, Cody? You'll charge us for the next one.
That's right.
Jordan, I saw your hand went up there. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I got 2 for you, Cody. Outside of like Facebook or Kijiji prospecting, do you prospect in your natural market at all? And do you prospect on like a referral network at all with any customers?
Like what geographical area am I prospecting or
no, I guess like more natural market. So like people within like your own bubble or like businesses that like friends, family, that sort of thing.
I actually prefer not selling my own bubble. I'd like just speak, then there's no pressure that way. And especially if you sell something that for whatever reason doesn't end up working out as well as they expected, then it's not a friend that's mad at you. At least it's a complete stranger basically. But yeah, I just personally, I know some people sell people they know and they have lots of success with it. I just don't go out of my way to network that way. Especially since I have enough leads to call either way. But if you know people that you think would be high potential that you could sell and you know them personally, then go for it. And what was your other question? Or did that?
Yeah, do you try to work off referral based as well prospecting?
That's actually something I probably should do more. I always actually forget to ask for referrals, but it's also kind of hard when you first sell them because you haven't proven yourself yet. But I have actually called back some people in the past and asked them for referrals after the fact, especially if we make them a website. That's my favorite product to sell is our 5 and 10 page websites. And often the customers are really happy with the end result for those. And then I just like a month ago, I sold a guy a website, and while I was talking to him, he was just like, oh, this would be great for a friend of mine. Here's his number. And then I called him and sold his buddy too. So obviously, if somebody offers you that, then take it right off the bat. But part of our script is, I think at the end of it, it still says if you have any family members or friends, colleagues, things like that have a business that you think would benefit from this, do you have their information? It definitely doesn't hurt to ask for that.
Good questions. Thanks, Jordan. Alice, I see your hands up too. Go for it.
Yeah, I just had one back when I was in sales, a million years ago. They would tell us to go and check out the Chamber of Commerce or local newspapers, that kind of thing. Like I know you, Cody, you went through like second page of Google or Facebook, Kijiji. Like these are really good because these are businesses like trying to get people that way. But do you go onto chambers of commerce websites or other sources, like small things like that?
I personally don't, like I said, just because Facebook is enough to give me enough prospects to last the entire time. But if you can find a prospect source that's just a list of brand new businesses, then that would probably be a better source than even what I have. Because brand new businesses are going to be the strongest leads. So if you can find access to like a list of brand new businesses on the Chamber of Commerce or whatever it may be, then definitely leverage that to the best of your ability, because that would definitely be a great place to start prospecting.
Cool. And do you have any other suggestions aside from these that, I don't know, like local newspapers, anything else that you might think would be a good idea to start prospecting?
So newspapers, I've seen other reps have success with that as well, and I've used it in the past too. Every different source will have its different objections. Kijiji, they're all about the fact that it's a free advertisement, so you have to overcome that into convincing them to spend money. Kijiji is a lot of like fly-by-night businesses too, but there's a lot of businesses that advertise on Kijiji that want to appear more legitimate, and then that's where you can come in and be like, okay, well, we have a service called NetSync, we can get you a website, obviously that's going to add a lot more credibility, yada yada yada. Newspapers, one of the biggest objections is a lot of the people that advertise in the newspaper are older demographic, or they just don't see the value in online. So that's where you just have to really take your time and be patient with them to try and explain the benefits of online. So yeah, there's literally, I'm sure, hundreds of different ways to prospect, and that's where you just gotta think outside of the box and get used to that. Like if you find success with newspapers, for example, then eventually you'll start to learn all the different kinds of newspaper prospect related objections, and then you could definitely do well off that. It's just with newspapers, it's kind of annoying when you want to when you're searching for prospects and to type them all in the prospect tool manually, as I'm just lazy, so it's like kind of a hassle to type them in one by one, where if you're doing it online, it's just copy paste, and you could probably do 3 times as many leads in the same amount of time.
Okay, thanks, Cody.
No worries.
I have a question, Cody.
Sure.
So comparing the dialer to doing your prospecting, how would you compare the close ratios and why? Obviously, your close ratio prospecting is going to be higher because you're probably making fewer calls. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, so I'm definitely biased when it comes to this. There's going to be a lot of people that have a lot of success with the dialer too. I find with the dialer, the best way to be successful is you literally have to hammer out as many calls as you possibly can. And then eventually it's the numbers game. You'll come across those decent leads. The main difference with like your average dialer call compared to a prospect call, it's prospects. The main benefits is it's, especially if it's a fresh lead to the system, the odds of you getting a hold of the owner right off the bat is, I would say, honestly 10 to 20 times higher than through the dialer. Obviously, speaking with the owner compared to a receptionist is already going to take you 10 times further in the sales process. And just getting a hold of somebody who hasn't already been called 50 to 100 times, like literally some people that you'll call have been phoned. I wouldn't be surprised if their business has been around for a few years, if they've been called 1,000 times for marketing. And so you can imagine how much more difficult it is to sell somebody who's been called 1,000 times compared to 1 or 2 times in the past. So my close rate is probably 5 times higher calling a prospect lead compared to a dialer lead, 5 to 10 times, I would say.
Cool. Thank you.
Good question, guys. Any others before we set Cody free?
Any outside information sources that you would recommend, such as books or certain people to kind of steal some tricks from on the outside?
In sales or prospecting? Like sales in general, or?
Yeah, either or.
My favorite book, I listened to the audiobook for it, was The Psychology of Selling by Brian Tracy. I find a lot of his stuff to be pretty good, and oh, there you go.
Who's
there's
that? Jordan has it. Why am I not surprised?
Couple lines from that book that have like I still use. I read the book probably 4 years ago, and I still use them to this day, and I find them to work quite well. And then once you guys start selling websites, I definitely I've taken courses on SEO, and my friend Nick Dion, we've both taken courses on it, and we both by far sell the most websites out of everyone on the sales floor, because we know so much more about it than the average rep. So I definitely suggest when I think it's like 6 to 8 weeks in, when you guys get trained on websites, take that training to the next level, watch YouTube videos. I actually took like a Udemy course on it. I downloaded another course. I probably spent like 5 hours just taking courses on SEO. You can also take courses on like Google Ads. And the benefit of that is when you're talking to a customer, like I can within 5 seconds look at a customer's website. I use a tool called SEO Meta in One. It shows me the back end of their website, and I can see within 5 seconds if they have any idea what they're doing when it comes to SEO. And we can discuss that, get into our options. Our websites are all actually very well optimized for their price point. And I found that a lot of the websites I've sold, because I'm usually selling into a bit smaller, less competitive areas, that our websites can often appear like a lot of my websites I've sold have ended up ranking as the #1 result for their main keyword.
Did you say that was SEOmeta.com?
It's an extension for Chrome called SEO Meta in One Click. But I wouldn't worry about it until you're actually really able to sell websites, or 5 and 10 page websites. But yeah, definitely at that point, something you want to look into. If I see somebody doesn't have a website linked to their advertisement, I will make sure to mention websites 100% of the time, because it's a much easier sale and it's our best product in my opinion.
Cool.
Anything else?
I think that's it, Cody. You've left us speechless.
Okay, well, usually what happens is you guys will probably forget about 50% of what I went over. So if you guys have any like quick questions down the road, feel free to send me a message on Teams or something like that, and go from there.
That's really generous, man, and really generous to spend your time with us today. I know it was last minute. Guys, we do have this recorded, so you'll be able to go and watch this back. I'll make sure you guys have the link. Yeah, Cody, thanks again. We'll let you go. Super, super valuable, man. Cheers.
Yeah, no problem, and good luck everyone with your sales.
Thanks so much, Cody.
Thanks, Cody.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thanks, Cody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Cody.
Hey guys. Do we still have
Alice?
All right, Marissa, Trey, Michael, Fatty, and
Jackson left, it looks like.
Well,
Oh.
you know what? Let's go back in the other meeting.
Okay.
Are you gonna invite us?
yes.